Hey guys, it's Jackson here from Titanic Games, and today what we're going to be doing is, well, basically doing this. So I'll show really quick what we're going to do. We're going to be adding world temperature to our game and body temperature that will kind of regulate itself depending on the world temperature, and then, also hooking up to a little display like this and formatting the text in a way that we want it. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and do it. All right, so now we can go ahead and get started here. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our blueprints folder, and we're going to right click and create a new folder. I'm going to call this curves. So we might have more curves later on that we'll use, but basically this folder will be for any kind of curve assets that we'll have. Okay, so if you're not familiar with those, I'll show you right now how we'll create them. So you'll open it up, and we're going to right click and go under miscellaneous, and you'll see up here that there's a curve asset. So we'll select that. And up here will pop a curve float, curve linear color, or curve vector that you can choose from. So the one that we're going to choose is a curve float. Okay, that just has a single curve for a float value. There's also linear color and vector, which have multiple tracks on them, I believe. But yeah, we'll go with curve float, and we'll say select. Now I'm going to name it CF underscore daily temp fluctuation. Okay. CF standing for curve float, all right, and then daily temp fluctuation, because what we're going to be using this curve for is as a way to drive temperature fluctuations throughout a day. Okay, so we'll open this up. All right, and what we want to do is, well, we're going to scroll out a little bit. So we should have -1 and 1 in range, and also be able to see from 0 to 1. Okay. So basically this 0 line here is going to be kind of like our middle, or not our middle of the day, but kind of like the baseline temperature value that we'll use. Okay, now from -1 to a value of 1 will be kind of the variance that we use to fluctuate our temperature around. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just hold shift and click to add a key. All right, and we're going to set its time to 0, value to -1. Okay, then we're going to go all the way to 1 here, and shift click. We'll select it again, and just make sure that it's set to 1 and -1. So if it isn't, just enter in the values. All right, now we're going to hit fit horizontal to fit it into the horizontal. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add some some values to go upwards. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to pick this first one at about 0.25-ish, right about there maybe. Okay, so I'll set the time here to, let's say 0.15, and then the value, we'll make it 0.25. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, and now we'll come over here a little bit towards, the end of the day. Okay, and we'll shift click again, and we'll just change the values. So we'll say time of 0.65 and value of, let's say, how about 0.85? Will that work? Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, now the reason I'm not setting it to 1 right now is because we're going to have to lower it a little bit, or we have to have it a little lower, because we're going to use what's called an auto curve here for the interpolation. And so with everything selected, just drag and select, we'll hit auto, and that will kind of give it this nice curve. Okay, now we can edit the tangents to kind of make it a little smoother, like so, and just try to get it so that it peaks out at that 1 value up there. So close to it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but close is fine. Okay, so there we go. We have our curve. If we hit fit, it'll fit it for us, and it should look something like this maybe, because we're trying to, I guess, imitate fluctuations in temperature throughout the day. All right, so just remember that this baseline here, this 0 value, will be later on our kind of like our core temperature. Okay, and then from -1 to 1 will be filled in by the variance that we add to our temperature. Okay, so we've got our curve done. I know I spent a little bit of time on that, but it's important to get right. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to go create some enums for this. So we're going to right click, and we're going to go to blueprints, enumeration, and we're going to call this one degree type. Okay, we'll open this up, add two new ones. I'm going to call this first one Fahrenheit, and this next one Celsius, because you might want to have different Fahrenheit or Celsius degrees, so we'll try to factor that into this. All right, if you're only going to be working with one or the other, then you really don't need this, but just in case, I'm going to show it. Now that we have that, we can go back to our blueprints, and we're ready to work with our weather manager some more. So we'll go into weather and open up our weather manager. All right, so yours should be looking something like this right now. Okay, from the previous video, this is kind of some of the stuff we set up for the day and night cycle. So everything is categorized right now the way we wanted it. Now from the last video to this one, all I did was categorize some of the functions. So go ahead and just take a second if you want and change the categories of these. Okay, it's just a really minuscule thing. I didn't want to show it on the screen. Okay, so just go ahead and change these functions into their however organizationally it would make sense to you. Okay, all right, so once you've done that, let's go ahead and we're just gonna make one little edit for the sun one. We're gonna make sure that its category here is changed to day-night cycle with all the spaces between it. Right, at least this is what happened with mine. Right, I added all these variables to this day-night one, and it created a weird separation. So if I compile and save now, basically you just want to make sure that all of your variables in the day-night cycle are in the same category, because I don't know why, but for me they were in two separate categories even though they were named the same. So anyways, just a little thing to make sure you've got correct. All right, and then the last thing here is we didn't actually plug in our fade sun function, so we'll drag that out here and just hook it into the tick. All right, so now we're ready to actually get started with adding the temperature now. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll create a new variable first, and we're going to call this degree type. Okay, we're going to change this to our E degree. Oh, it stopped typing for me. E degree type. Okay, and we can make this editable. All right, so that'll be represent what kind of how we want to keep track of our degrees. So by default it's going to be Fahrenheit, and that's what I'll be working in. But if you're European or something, you can use Celsius. You could also use Kelvin, I guess, but we'll just stick with these two basic ones. All right, next what we'll do is add one that we will call final world temperature. And the reason we're going to call it final world temperature, let's change it to a float really quick. Yeah, the reason we're going to call this final world temperature is because this will be the temperature after we've made calculations, like to account for fluctuations in the time of day and all that kind of stuff. So we'll add another one here that we'll call base world temperature. So this will be the the core base temperature that we want the game to have. Okay, we'll add another one that we'll call let's call this temperature variation. All right, and it might be helpful to actually name this world temperature variation so that we don't get confused later on if we have other variations. Okay, we'll add another float that we will call temperature update rate. Okay, and you can make that editable as well. Okay, so now we can go ahead and set these variables. So for final world temperature, we're going to leave that one alone. For base world temperature, I'm going to say 72 degrees. Okay, so we'll go kind of based on like a I don't know, like a room temperature kind of thing. Yeah, we'll go with that. So now we have this world temperature variation. I'm going to give it like a plus or minus of 5. Okay, compile and save that. And then for temperature update rate, this will be how many times we want it to update per second. Okay, so we'll take this and we'll make it 10. So basically 10 times per second this will update, because I'd rather not call it off of tick since we're already doing so many things off of tick. So we're going to try to just keep it to a timer this time. Okay, so next let's go ahead and categorize these. So we'll put these all into something or a category called temperature. So go ahead and do that for the rest of these really quick. All right, so they should be looking something like that. Now I decided we should change our day curve here and move it into temperature since it's mainly related to temperature. So we'll drag that in, and let's also rename this to temp fluctuation curve. Okay, So compile and save. And now we can set the default value for that fluctuation curve too, because we have a curve to work with. So we'll click this drop down, right, and we'll choose that CF daily temp fluctuation. Okay, compile and save. All right, and now we can, move on with the rest of it. So we'll go ahead and move this up, create a little space, because we're going to add a new pin on begin play. And essentially what we want to do is say set timer by function name. Okay, object will be itself. Function name. We have yet to make this function, but we're going to call it update world temperature. Okay, make sure it's spelled like that. All right, and then for the time now, we're going to take our temperature update rate, we're going to get it, and since this is how many times per second we want to do it, we need to do a float divided by float. Okay, we'll hold control and move this down, make this a 1, plug it in, right? And there we go. So now we have, we have this value now in, times per second. Okay, and then lastly, let's make it looping, and then we can package this as a little function. So we'll right-click, say collapse to function, and we'll call it start updating temperature. Okay, open it up, straighten it out. Boom, we got it. Now we need to make that function that we are supposed to be calling here. So just to make sure we name it correctly, let's take all this and copy it, and then we'll create a function and just paste the name. Okay, so it should be spelled like that now. So in this function, we're going to do a little bit of math now. All right, so first thing we want to do is we want to get the fraction of the day. All right, so we're going to get how much of the day has passed, or is left, I guess. And what we're going to do with it is perform a modulus on it. We're just going to do a modulus of 1. The reason for that being that every day we want this, what's going to happen here, to start over. Okay, so this is just a modulo of 1 because every day we'll start over. Okay, next what we'll do is we'll take our curve here and we'll get it, and we are going to say get float value. So this will return whatever float value we have on our curve based on this on the specified time. Okay, and since we're working on a range from 0 to 1, which is how our curve is set up, this will work out really nicely. So plug this in. Okay, and that will fetch whatever value on the curve we have. Okay, so with this, we want to say float times float, right? And we're going to multiply our world temperature variation by whatever the float value is. So that's kind of where what I was talking about earlier when we set up the float, how any value above 0 and any value below 0, that's only ranging from -1 to 1. So we're essentially taking that value and multiplying it by whatever the variation is. So it's kind of amplifying that that variance off of 0. Okay. Now from here we'll drag out and do a float plus float, because we need to add whatever this variation is onto our base world temperature. All right, and now that we've calculated that, we can set our world, or set our final world temperature, right? Because that's the final temperature that we have. All right. All right. Now next, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a way for this to be visually shown on our screen. Okay. So how we're going to do that is first we're going to go to blueprints, to content, UI, and we're going to open up our UI game HUD. Okay, now up in the top right, let's go ahead and add a panel. So we'll add a horizontal box. Okay, and we're going to anchor it to the top right. I'm going to set its, first I'm going to take its alignment and set its X to 1. Then we're going to take its position X and set it to -40. And then position Y, we'll say 40 as well. Now for the size of this guy, I'm going to say size Y of 40. And size X, we'll say, how about 300? Or actually, we'll do 400 to kind of keep it similar to how these are. All right? So next what we'll do is we're going to add 2 text widgets into it. So we'll take text, put that on, and then do another text. Okay, then we're going to take both of them. So shift select or control select, either way works. And we're going to go over here to layout and click fill. So they should fill the thing. Now for this one, we'll call it world temp and then colon space. So make sure you have a space there. Okay, and then for this one, we're going to make it a variable so that we can edit it, and we'll call this world temp text. So now that we have this as a variable, we're going to be able to edit it in the graph. Okay, now before we do anything else, let's actually take the fill and say 0.5. I think that's what I wanted to do. Actually, you know what? Nah, that's not looking very good. So we'll just leave it back at 1. So that'll be fine. Okay, so now we have that. Let's go ahead and go into our graph. And I'm going to close this, and we're going to create a new function. So we're going to call this one set world temp. All right. And then with the function selected, we're going to go over here. This is the details panel. All right, I have it minimized there. But we're going to add a new input of type degree type. We're going to call this degree, or let's call it degree type. Yeah. All right, then we'll add another one that we'll change to a float, and we'll call this temperature. And I'm actually going to move that one above, so we're going to shift it up. Okay, so compile and save that. Now we're going to be calling this function from inside here, inside of this update world temperature. So every time the temperature updates, we'll update our HUD as well. Okay, so this value of temperature will be whatever our world temperature is. Okay, so for this, let's right click and we're going to say promote to local variable. Okay, and I'm just going to call it temp. All right, compile and save really quick. Next, we'll take our degree type, drag out, and we'll do a switch. All right, now depending on whatever the value here is, you know, whether it's Fahrenheit or Celsius, we're going to basically we need to convert our temperature into either Celsius or Fahrenheit. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to create what's called a blueprint function library. Okay, so we'll go back out to content, open up blueprints, right click, create a new folder, and we'll call this libraries. Open this up. Now what a blueprint library is it's just a collection of functions that are available to be accessed from any graphs or blueprints that you have. Okay, so they can be really helpful in some cases. So this one that we're going to create, we'll right click, go to blueprints, and choose blueprint function library. So I'm just going to call this let's BFL blueprint there. BPL maybe? Yeah, we'll do BPL blueprint library underscore temperature. Okay, so any functions that you want to have related to temperature, be it conversions or setting, different temperature types. All right, that's kind of what we're going to do here. So we'll call this first one here Fahrenheit. Can't spell it. Fahrenheit to Celsius. Create another one that we'll call Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay. So we'll start with the Celsius to Fahrenheit. Now, if you don't know these formulas, you can easily look them up. It's really simple. But we're going to take Celsius to Fahrenheit, add an input. Okay, we're just going to call it temperature, and then give it a little descriptor right here. Oh, I spelled Celsius wrong. Okay, so Celsius, and then we're going to make it a float. Let's actually add a little space there. Okay, so it should be looking something like this now. All right, so with this variable that we'll be passing through from wherever in our blueprints, we're going to multiply it. So float times float. We're going to multiply it by a divisions. So we'll take this float divided by float, and we're going to do 9 divided by 5. Plug that in. Okay, and then we're going to add onto this. So add a float of 32. So we'll add 32. Okay, we'll drag out. I'm going to do a return node, and then we'll add an output. Okay, so that'll add it there, and we'll call this temperature Fahrenheit. All right, now you don't need those little descriptors if you don't want them. I'm just putting them here so it's clear to you guys what's going on. So there's that one. Let's go back to Fahrenheit to Celsius now, and we're essentially going to do, kind of the opposite of what we did before. So let's add an input and an output, because we know we'll need an output. Call this one temperature Fahrenheit. Spelled that right? I hope so. And then this one will be temperature and Celsius. Okay. So now for here, what we'll do is we'll do a float minus float. We'll subtract 32. Then we're going to multiply it by a division. So we'll do float divided by float. 5 divided by, 9. Okay, now I've seen this formula in, various different setups, so this might look different or it might look similar to how you would have done it, but basically just however you want to do the formula, just make sure it works. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. Compile and save, and we'll close it. So now we'll be able to access these functions from wherever. So we'll go back to our UI game HUD. Okay, now for Fahrenheit, what we want to do is, we're going to drag off. And essentially, end goal here is we want to set this world temp text. So we'll drag it out, we'll get it, and we'll say set text, and we want this set text of text. Okay, hook that up. And that end goal is the same for both of them. So we'll create another one, hook it up to Celsius. We'll add a quick reroute node because we're going to have stuff up here. All right. Now I'm working in Fahrenheit. Okay, so because of that, I don't technically need to convert an already Fahrenheit value to Fahrenheit, but for Celsius we'll need to. Okay. Because we are working with Fahrenheit. So let's do the Celsius first, just to show how to use that function that we created. So what we'll do is we'll take temp, get it, and we'll drag out, and we're going to simply say Fahrenheit to Celsius. And you'll see that it shows up under our BPL temperature library. Okay. Now, what we can do is, if we go back to our library and open this, we'll actually make both of these functions pure, because we're not going to be actually passing, or we're not going to, actually be setting any values. We're just kind of doing a conversion. Okay, so we'll take both of these, make them pure. All right. Now we'll go back to our game HUD, and now it should look something like this. All right, so that's more of what we want here. Okay, next what we're going to do is, we need to basically take this and go to text. All right. Now this part's important here, because this will help us format how we want the variable of our float to show up as text. Okay, because by default floats have like 7 floating points, or decimals essentially. So we need a way to round it and then organize it or format it. So for our rounding method, we're going to choose half from 0, and that's just my version or my rounding method of choice. You can look through whatever one suits you. For minimum integral digits and maximum, we'll leave those. Right now for the minimum fractional digits though, we are going to say 1, and then max we're going to say 1 as well. So that will just basically make sure that we only have 1 decimal. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do next then is we're going to basically find a way to format our text how we want it. Okay. Now, oftentimes in the past, I've seen it used where people will do like a, let's see, what is it? A string. They'll use like a 2-text string, and then they'll use like an append node, and then add a bunch of things, to append it. But I wanted to show kind of another different way that you can do that. All right. So we're going to take our in text here, and we're going to type format text. Okay. And what this node does is it gives you a way of formatting text and adding kind of these variables into it that wherever the variables are in the text, it will add a node that you can plug in a variable, and it will replace it into the text. So I'll show you what I mean. So for the first value that we want to add temperature. So to create a variable, you just use brackets. So we'll say bracket, say temperature, end bracket. Okay, now if I hit enter, this creates a variable, and it's a wildcard. Okay, so the variables that a format text can have are bytes, integers, floats, text, or e-text genders. So what we can do for this temperature then is, since we've already kind of brought it to a text here, or how we want it, we can just take it and plug it into temperature like so. Okay, but we also want to add kind of a degree onto it. So what we'll do is we'll click back in format, we'll hit a space and then do a bracket, and we'll call this degree. Okay, and then do another bracket there, hit enter, and now it's added another variable for us. So we can drag off of this and we'll say make literal text, and we're just going to enter in a capital C. So this will read temperature, okay, whatever the value is for that, and then space, and then whatever we've entered for the variable degree. Okay, so we'll see that in action once we're done here. But basically this is our formatting for our Celsius. So we can take it all, hit C, or actually never mind, I'm not going to comment it right now. Okay, yeah, so next what we'll do is we'll go to Fahrenheit. Okay, and we need to do the Fahrenheit one, so it's going to be pretty much similar to this one, but with a few differences. Primarily we're not going to be doing this, and we're going to be using an F here. So we might as well just take it all and copy it and paste it up here, because we're going to use it. We'll delete this. I'm going to bring this back out so you can kind of see it again. Plug in the temp like that. All right, hook Fahrenheit up like so. We'll change our text here to F. So because our for Fahrenheit, space it out a little more, and there we go. So now we've got our Fahrenheit set up and our text set up. Okay, so compile and save. And now all we need to do is go back to our weather manager, right? And we need to set up a way to call the function. So we'll go to our event graph quick, and let's see. We will. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll add a pin. Okay, and then we're going to create a function that we will call set HUD reference. Right. Now what we'll do with this is we'll do an isValid, and we don't have anything to check yet because we're going to make a variable in a second. And what we'll do, is we will cast to our BP underscore survival character. For the object, we'll say get player character. All right, and then from here we can get the game HUD reference that we created a while back. So just to show you again where that is, I'll go open up our character. Here he is. Here's event begin play, and here's the reference. Okay, so we're going to be opening that up, which is this HUD. All right, and then we're going to say promote to variable. We'll just call this HUD reference, or you could call it like character HUD reference or something. Okay, but that's all we're going to do there, and then now we have that variable, so we can plug it into isValid. Okay, and then back on the event graph, we'll drag this in, hook it up like so, space it out a little bit. All right, so that will be creating the HUD reference for us. Right now, you might want to do this actually before the start updating temperature. Okay, because that will start the function that will eventually call this new function that we created here, this set world temp. So you want to make sure that you have a reference to the HUD before you call the function that will update the HUD. Okay, just kind of makes sense. So we'll go back to our update world temperature, and now we can call that. So we'll go take our HUD reference, get it, and we'll say set world temp, plug it in, and then you can plug this directly in, or you could add another getter. Either way is fine. Okay, and then degree type, we'll take our degree type, plug that in, and there we go. We should now be able to press play, and we'll see it updating in the top right. So we press play, so there it is in the top right. See, it's currently at 76.7 and doing its thing. Right, sun's moving slowly across the sky, and then since it's based on that that curve we did, as it lowers into the sky, the and kind of following the time of the day, it will start decreasing. All right. So if you remember, we set our base temperature to 72 degrees. Okay, so whenever it passes that 0 of the curve, it hits 72. And then our variation is plus or minus 5. So it will always go between 67 and 77, I think it was. Okay, so you see there it hit 67, kind of that's where it's bottoming out, and then it's coming back up for the next day. All right, so there you have it. There's how to add the world temperature. In the next one, we'll go ahead and add the, we'll set up the time really quick, and then we'll do the body temperature. All right, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you like it, like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.